I just wanted to come and greet you all and let you know how grateful I am for all that you do for our communities across the state of South Dakota. We are top 3 in the nation for energy infrastructure in this country. We are top 5 for our renewable energy that we bring into our portfolio to use to put a package together that keeps the lights on across the state of South Dakota. And we are top 3 for the least amount of pollution out of all the states in the country too. So we've got a lot of things to be proud of, and we talk and throw out these statistics all the time, but the reality is that you make it happen every day. You make sure that we have energy that comes from a diversified source that is consistent and reliable for the families and the businesses that live here. And it means the world to me as somebody who's been involved in business my whole life and then recognized some of the struggles that we have at the federal government level with regulation and how that impacts you, and at the state as well. Some of the challenges, boy, every day you get up and you just make it happen. So you're the bright spot on the horizon right now. I hope most of you caught some of the information that I shared in my State of the State address earlier this week. On Tuesday, I talked a lot about the fact that South Dakota's economy right now is the strongest that it's ever been in the 133 years that we've existed. And we are growing. We are growing 9 times faster than the national average. And not only are we doing well as far as businesses expanding and bringing new ones in and new families in, but a lot of the other issues that we've dealt with over the years are going down as well as far as social challenges. Our mental health needs are going down when virtually every other state is going up. Our overdoses for drugs are going down when virtually every other state is going up. And I think our people are happier than what we see going on. So I just wanted to come and spend a little bit of time with you and let you ask me some questions if you have something on your mind. I think that's always more impactful than me coming up here and giving a big speech about things I think you want to hear about. If you want to ask me something about energy or anything besides that, I'd certainly be willing to take some questions. You all sat there so long, waited for me. You said, forget it, we're over her now. Bring somebody else in. It's almost lunchtime. Nothing? Yes. Well, we have medical marijuana in the state that has stood up. The program's running, and it was running on time according to how it was passed on the ballot. Last I checked, I think there is 65, 66 different bills filed during legislative session to change that program. If you remember last year, I brought forward some reforms that I wanted to see. I didn't necessarily want kids smoking marijuana in school, which according to the ballot measure they could do. It also said that anybody could get a medical card and not have it regulated in a way that was appropriate according to how other pharmaceuticals are regulated. And I brought some recommendations last year, and the legislature didn't pass any of them. So there was a summer study all year dealing with a medical program, and now they've got lots of those ideas they're coming back with themselves in different bills. So my job now is just to let them have their debate and policy and see what bills can actually make it to my desk. But I want it to be a responsibly run program. I want it to be something that is certainly there as a pharmaceutical that people can utilize, but also I want it to be accountable. And I don't want to show up at a convenience store or a grocery store and see marijuana gummies there for our 5-year-olds to grab off the shelf. That's really my goal, is that the fact is that marijuana is very different today than it was 40, 50 years ago. Much, much more toxic. It is not regulated by anybody. There are all kinds of toxins and molds and other drugs that we find laced in marijuana every single day when our law enforcement officers are finding it out on the highways and streets. And it's just not the same thing it was back in the 70s. So my goal and my job as governor is to protect people's safety and to make sure we're not selling something that's dangerous for them. Now, there's also a bill coming, I believe, to do recreational marijuana. And I believe that'll probably be on the ballot again. So we'll see if the people of South Dakota support it and want it. I think everybody knows how I feel, but ultimately the people in the state will make that decision. Did you have a follow-up? Are you talking about the medical or recreational? Well, medical, there's dispensaries in the state, and there's been some discussion on some people want to limit where it can be sold. For me, when I look at it, they can certainly bring bills to limit where it's sold. It's hard for me to make a case on not allowing it to be sold somewhere that other pharmaceutical drugs are sold. So in reality, you go down to Walgreens right now, there's a pharmacy in Walgreens. Legally, there can be a dispensary in Walgreens. There could be one in Walmart. So then do you want people in Walmart stopping and picking up their medical marijuana, cannabis, as they get their groceries and leave? I don't know. So that's some of the things that I've been talking about and making recommendations on for several years, for 3 years since I've been governor. There's a lot of other people that are becoming much more aware of what that looks like in reality out in your day-to-day lives, and recognizing, well, maybe I don't really want to go to Walmart and have somebody picking that up and then handing it off to somebody else in the checkout line. So that's really what South Dakotans will have to decide, because I certainly can make recommendations and tell people how we're doing it, but I'm just a part of the solution. On recreational, in other states, once you have recreational out there and it's stood up in a lot of areas, it's readily available everywhere. And it would be my goal that we don't have recreational marijuana being sold in our gas stations and in our businesses like that. We see all the time in other states where kids are ending up in emergency rooms because they've gotten a hold of something that they didn't realize what was in it. And we also see where other drugs are mixed into it that takes something that they don't think is deadly and makes it very deadly, and not really recognizing the consequences of it. Yes.
Morning, Governor. Thanks for coming out. In your state address the other day, you talked about dollars available to help with infrastructure needs out there. And as rural cooperatives in the state, we have a lot of small communities where we're trying to get some housing developments going. So I guess more than a question, maybe a request, is when you work with the legislators to implement those rules, please keep in mind funds like our Rural Electric Economic Development Fund. If we could get dollars in there to get into developers' hands to keep the prices of lots and stuff down so we can get housing going in our small communities, we'd appreciate any help we could get from you on that.
No, that's great. And one thing I would let everybody know is that a lot of the dollars that go into infrastructure are coming from the federal government. They've passed these big spending bills that are coming to the state of South Dakota. And people have asked me, well, why don't you reject it? Because there is debt at the federal level. The federal government's borrowing this money to send to us. And as governor, I evaluated that and went through what the federal government put in that law when they passed it. And if I return that back to the Treasury, it gets redistributed to other states. And the debt doesn't necessarily go down at the federal level. So we're trying to figure out how to use those dollars in the best way to pay down our debt, put money into reserves, and invest in long-term infrastructure projects. The one thing that we have to keep in mind, though, too, is that the state of South Dakota is going to be audited on how we spend that money. Treasury guidance right now is telling us that for the vast majority of those federal dollars, I can only put them into water projects. So I can put them into sewer projects, drainage, storm sewer, curbs and gutters in order to facilitate that for development, but not necessarily into, building towers and putting up other types of infrastructure. So we do have, in the state of South Dakota right now, we have tripled our average sales tax growth as well. So we have a lot of other dollars, because our economy is doing so well, that could be a priority where we're investing. So that's the debate that's going on right now. But a lot of times when you look at my budget and you look about what I talked about in my State of the State address, a lot of those federal dollars are dictated by what the federal government tells us we have to spend it on. And we will allocate those dollars. A lot of ours is going into housing, which you mentioned. We would like to, as a governor's office, as I would like to run it, is through the LIP program, which is in our Governor's Office of Economic Development program, and it is one where everybody has skin in the game. The state puts in $200 million, matches it with $200 million from the local community, and then $200 million from the developer, ends up in $600 million being spent on housing to deal with the infrastructure to get those houses built more affordably for those career individuals that want to move into the communities. So it really is a package that allows everybody to have skin in the game, drives down the cost so that we can actually get development where we haven't before. In fact, I was just having a debate with a group of legislators because they wanted to put $100 million into the housing agency and run it through that. The housing agency is low-income housing, which is subsidized housing, which is not what we're talking about in South Dakota. We need career housing for families to live in, and housing that we can actually get it built and get a developer to look at a town that they just couldn't make it cash flow before. For instance, you know, a town of 500 to 700 people could never get a developer to come in and look because the costs were too high for them to come in and build 2 or 3 houses. But if you have this grant program that's coming from the state to match with that local community, to match with the developer's money, and all of a sudden now it cash flows and it becomes a reality. And that's what we're looking for, because so many of these families, they aren't looking for big cities anymore. For the first time in history, when people look for where they want to live, it's always been big cities, tropical destinations, beaches. Right now, the #1 search is rural America and small towns. So everybody's looking for places like South Dakota and our small towns because they want to be like us. They want to live somewhere where their kids can be safe. They can go to a small school and be in the classroom and really make personal decisions for their family. So that's a good thing for us. We have some of our small towns that businesses were closing, schools were dying, less kids. We have the chance to grow them and sustain them and help them to be thriving for many years to come, but we have to do it right, and they have to have somewhere to live. So that's how we've focused a lot of those programs.
Governor Noem, Mark
Yes.
Hofer from Central Electric. You talked about the extra sales tax money. Do you have any idea on is that how much contributed to new sales or how much is due to cost of goods and services that have gone up?
I don't have that breakdown for you, but I could certainly get it to the leadership here to distribute to you. But a lot of it is use, but the vast majority of it is the sales tax. I can get the breakdown for you, though. Other questions? There we go.
Yes, Governor Noem. First of all, I'd like to commend you for everything you're doing for South Dakota and for putting South Dakota on the map in a good way. And referring to your State of the Union, State of the State, and I wish it were State of the Union address. I really appreciate your stand on girls' sports, on the heartbeat issue and abortion, and for getting some of this stuff out of our school system, such as CRT. Yeah. What flack do you expect to get, and what do you think the chances of these going through are? And thank you.
Well, a lot of those bills, those 3 that you specifically mentioned, we're hoping go through the legislature in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Because we have so much money we're dealing with, we'd like to do a lot of the policy bills early so that we can really focus on budgeting wisely. And I've talked to the leadership teams in the legislature about that. What I'd like to ask you all for a favor. If you care about those bills, I'd like to ask you to contact your legislators. Because people now more than ever are paying attention. And the legislators, these are bills that, you know, the girls' sports one's just about fairness. Years ago, when they fought for Title IX, it was just so that girls could have a chance to compete, maybe get a college scholarship, you know, maybe have a chance to go professional if they wanted to. And if we start blurring the line behind biological males and females, they just won't have the ability to compete. So it's about fairness, and I hope that if you feel passionately about that, that you'll call or send an email to your legislator and let them know. They do pay attention. Most people think that they don't really pay attention. It only takes 3 or 4 calls or emails for people to start sitting up. Even when I was in Congress, if I got 3 phone calls on something, all of a sudden we knew it was a huge priority and we needed to be on top of it and make sure we were doing the right thing. So, you know, the heartbeat bill is something that will move pretty quickly too. And CRT, gosh, all that's gonna say is that nobody can ever teach in our classrooms that somebody's better than another person based on their sex, religion, or their color of their skin. That should be fairly easy to decide. So I'm hopeful that South Dakota will pass these bills. That's why I brought them myself, and we'll be able to continue doing what we do best here, and that's what's, then focus on our kids. Yes. Yeah. Uh-oh. This is about me, he says. Okay. Does he have elk on his place? Maybe I'll go see him.
About once a month he'll call and he'll say, "Are you guys done with that, Governor? Because I need her out here now."
Oh.
So you're doing something right.
You know, the one thing I'd encourage you all to do, and you're already involved and I appreciate that, but somebody was asking me the other day about how I got into politics and government, and it was because I was raised by a rancher and a dad that woke me up. And, well, first of all, when he woke us up, he would say, "Get up, more people die in bed than anywhere else." So that was always encouraging. But he would tell us not to complain about things, just fix them. And people get alarmed by what they see happening across the country, parents showing up at school board meetings and people, you know, crowds gathering. I think it's a wonderful thing. When I first ran as governor, I wanted more civics and history taught in our classrooms, and Republicans killed it because they didn't think it was necessary. So for me, it's nice that people are paying attention. We've got more people paying attention than ever before. But I would like to ask all of you if you would consider getting involved to a higher level than you are today. Maybe run for something if you haven't, and maybe be a county commissioner or mayor, even run for something higher than that if you'd like to. My mom was complaining the other night about an elected official, and I said, "Well, why don't you run?" She said, "I'm 76 years old, Kristi." And I said, "Well, I don't care. I think Joe Biden's proven you can be any age and run for office." But you know, it's a lot of times I see people running for office, and people will accuse me of this too, so I understand, but running for the wrong reasons. And we need some more good people in South Dakota, like all of you, to continue to set the example for the nation. Because I think South Dakota is a bright spot. People look here and look at our people and how good you all are, and you give them hope that the only reason that anything we did in the last 2 years worked was because of our people. That's why. And, you know, they lit me on fire, and I get it, but the only thing that, for the different decisions I was making, and they're gonna keep doing that. I'm really sorry when you turn on the national news and you see South Dakota getting attacked, because they're coming straight at me. They're not coming at you, but just keep your chin up, and boy, if more of you would get involved, I think it'd be wonderful, because this state is pretty special, and we're going to stay here forever, and I think it'll always be a place that people are going to want to live. Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming to our meeting and visiting with us, Kristi, and thank you for your service. I'm Ken Slimgan, General Manager at Central Electric Cooperative out of Mitchell. My question is back to housing. We've got so many communities that have a need for housing, and as you already mentioned, the infrastructure cost is a challenge. I look at that issue and at the electric cooperatives, what role can we play in helping address that issue? And bringing members to us is a growth opportunity for us, and building a house out in the country doesn't have the same infrastructure costs as it does in town. Yeah. Is there a role for us to help address and fix that issue?
There is. All of your cities, your towns, and your counties got federal dollars. I wouldn't have asked them to put skin in the game on this housing program if they didn't have money. A lot of the cities and towns can do TIFs, or they can grant lots to the program as their portion of the funding, or they can use the federal dollars that they've received. It takes the community to put some skin in the game too, because it has to be a priority for them. I want it to be a priority for them to make sure that they want to get the housing done too. So if you would call those in leadership in your city and your county and talk about the reality of providing consistent, reliable energy to that community, and that it drives down costs for everybody, the more customers that you have and you can provide that service for and educate them, I think that would be fantastic. Because it still doesn't matter if I run this program, if I have a community that says, well, we've got 10 things here we want to do before we put any money into housing, then they're not going to participate in the program and they're not going to get you more customers. So just reach out to them, your city councils, your mayors, your county commissioners, and just let them know, what it means when you bring more customers in, and if they prioritize housing, and how that will fill a need for everybody by driving down their costs, especially with the inflation we see going on. It's going to keep going up. Interest rates are going to keep going up. Inflation's going to go up. And in fact, we're seeing food costs go up, and we're seeing all kinds of supplies and goods. It's going to be that way for a while because of the policies coming out of Washington, D.C. So the more we can do to grow and to drive down costs here and protect and insulate ourselves from it, the better off we'll be. I got time for one more question, I think, and then nothing? I wore you out. Okay, you have a wonderful meeting. Thank you for inviting me to be with you today. God bless you. Drive safe.